Hello everybody, and welcome back to our ranking of the Kingdom Hearts bosses from worst to best. Before we jump back into the ranking, I wanted to invite you to have your voice heard on the hardest bosses in Kingdom Hearts 1. In the description below, I've added a survey for you to vote for every Kingdom Hearts 1 boss on their individual difficulty from a scale of 1 to 10. Cast your votes and I'll come back later with a community ranking. With that out of the way, let's kick things off with number 15. Number 15, Ursula. I would wager there were some of you that were surprised not to see Ursula join her peers on the other half of the list. As I mentioned in that video, we're getting to the point where bosses are above average, and I truly do believe that Ursula belongs in that category. The first phase has a sound concept. You shoot spells of corresponding colors into her cauldron. If you shoot it enough, it'll explode, leaving her vulnerable to attack. It's a unique design, and it works well as an endurance fight, with Flotsam and Jetsam giving you MP to heal and cast on the cauldron. My two problems with the first phase are that it wasn't obvious that you need to keep attacking the cauldron for the explosion. When you hit it correctly, a fireball floats out in Ursula's direction. It ends up working out either way because you'll keep firing spells in, but it was still a bit obtuse. The far larger issue is the camera in tandem with the swimming controls. It's a real headache trying to track the cauldron, Ursula, and the Tuna Twins, especially because the lock-on here is spotty at best. Overall, it's not too difficult, and it is satisfying when you're able to smack the crap out of this triple-chinned octopussy. Which brings us to the second fight. This bloated hentai monster is one of the hardest bosses to this point in the game. She has bubble sprays, lightning breath, she'll suck you and then complain about the taste like you even asked to be jammed into her gullet in the first place, and she buffs halfway through the fight. Her buff brings random jolts of lightning to keep you on your fins at all times. The problem persists with the swimming, and its effect is more dramatic than ever. You essentially have to damage rush her to get as much MP back as possible so you can use Cure if you can swim through the random lightning strikes, that is. Goofy and Donald? They'll likely be dead the entire fight. That randomly spawning lightning makes quick work of them. Even if it does have a tell you can dodge, don't expect them to be up to that challenge. That's what I like about it though. Nothing in this fight other than the lightning is particularly random, and even the lightning does have a warning. I commend Ursula for offering a challenge because to this point in the game, most bosses were underwhelming in terms of difficulty. It's just a shame that the swimming controls and camera hold it back so much. If it wasn't for those, I'd probably love this fight, but as it stands, it's more middle of the road. Number 14, Cerberus. Speaking of challenges, this is easily the hardest of the early game bosses you'll fight. In the same way that Ursula's second phase gives you a lot to deal with at once, Cerberus has many attacks that force you to be constantly on the move. All of his attacks are well designed too. He can spit fireballs that have a fair tell, he will spew flame magic into the ground so little geysers will follow you around somewhat randomly, he can stomp the ground for a big earthquake you have to jump over, and he'll stop to chomp you down to size. The only time I found I could reasonably get damage in was during those chomps, but even then you can only go for so many hits before backing off or you'll be dog chow. The fight also has this badass setup with Hercules needing to rescue Cloud and leaving you to show your stuff. The only downside I have to the fight is that it's pretty lengthy for the early game because your windows to attack Cerberus are minimal. Early in the game, you just don't have the resources to keep up with his total damage output over the course of the fight unless you are flawless in your dodging and very patient when attacking. Goofy and Donald are almost certain to die early on as well, a problem that is rampant throughout the early game. It even tips you off that you weren't really ready to take him on.
Just between us, I'd already worn Cerberus down by the time the little guy jumped in.
Oh, piss off. How are your other labors going, Golden Boy? You do fight Cerberus later in the Hades Cup, with the only difference being an increased health pool, and that fight is far better because you have all the tools to effectively take him on at that point in the game. Overall, Cerberus is very solid, but I think that like Cloud, he has a little bit too much unbalanced offensive power to be worthy of the top 10. Number 13, Behemoth. This is almost the polar opposite of Cerberus. You can make comparisons in size and structure, but Behemoth doesn't have nearly anything going for him in terms of consistent offensive power. Just take a leisurely stroll up his backside and smack his horn aplenty. That said, unlike the Rock Titan, he finds a good balance of being a simple punching bag and having some attacks to make you act defensively. His primary threat are homing magic attacks that he'll summon. They do quite a lot of damage if you let them hit, and they do take a deliberate effort to dodge. The reason I celebrate Behemoth a little bit more than Cerberus is that I don't necessarily see simplicity as a bad thing if it works well. And most importantly, when things are all working in unison, it often makes it a lot of fun. It's not worth rewarding it too highly, especially because there's no real story behind him, but he's enough of a fun speed bump to earn the number 13 spot. Number 12, Darkside. His first entrance is shocking. You just started the game and have faced very few basic enemies, then suddenly this monstrosity pops out. The game says don't be afraid, but hello? How am I not supposed to be afraid of this Goliath? It's a cool bit of intimidation, and it capitalizes well on the very mysterious, trippy beginning. And as is good design for a first fight in a game, it's baby's first boss battle basic. He either punches the ground or fires magic shots out of his stomach. The magic shots hurt, but his fist punch spawns small heartless you can use to get your HP back. and his fist stays there for a long time. All you have to do is keep smacking away and it'll eventually fall. It's well done for an introductory fight. The second battle is relatively similar, definitely trippy with the island being consumed around you. He adds in a spirit ball attack that makes it rain orbs and you get a chance to smack his face, but it's still relatively easy with him providing mini Heartless for HP. Yet again, very appropriate for the early game. In the end game, you get to fight him one last time, and honestly, I don't even know if he had new moves. He was dead in less than a minute. It's actually awesome from the perspective of showing how much you've grown over the course of the game. It also lets you know with certainty that you've finally slain a demon that has haunted you since the very start. It's elementary, but that's often what a tutorial boss should be. Darkside fills that role nicely. Number 11, Hercules. This fight is something else. Hercules, being the demigod he is, has invulnerability to mortal attacks. That is until you hit him with a power that surpasses even godhood: barrels. Yeah, I'm dead serious. Hercules spends half this fight flexing so you can toss barrels to unearth his mortality. As for attacks, they are special, like this one where he charges around. All of his attacks have extremely generous tells. You take sizable damage if you do get hit, but other than his sword dancing move, you have no business letting any of them touch you. With those observations in mind, I have to say that I kinda love this fight. It's timeless because with this game's archaic and dated combat, these slow tells allow for you to get a good amount of dodging versus offensive attacks in. The barrel mechanic actually works because Hercules allows you time to throw them with his slower moves, and the invincibility counters your ability to recklessly lay into a slower opponent and use mana to keep your health high enough that they can never realistically kill you. It's an awesome duel, even Hercules admits it.
Wow! And I didn't even hold back!
Now I finally know what you mean about strength of heart. Mine comes from Donald and Goofy.
Excuse me, hello? You just ditched them so you could show Hercules your massive schlong. Weird flex, but okay. All told, this fight is almost perfectly balanced for the game's dated combat, but its somewhat lackluster difficulty is enough to keep it just outside the top 10. Number 10, Ice Titan. Going into this fight immediately after my snooze of the duel with the Rock Titan was a quick wake-up call. In complete contrast to that fight, here I found no means of spamming my attacks. Instead, you have to become an icicle parry god to bring his head down for only a few seconds of offensive opportunity. Luckily, you do tons of damage with the icicle parries, but he does loads right back himself. His arsenal of attacks is diverse and they can be challenging to balance. Personally, I found that my emphasis on parrying the icicles gave me heavy tunnel vision and I would get hit by his attacks that I'd barely see coming. The first part is challenging enough, but then he gets some new attacks in to throw you off. By the end, he's spamming so many different moves consecutively and sometimes even overlapping that you would best bring all the items you can, borrow some of that Herc invincibility, or step up and become your own god. The god of dodging and icicle parries. Keep in mind that you're doing this fight solo as well. It makes sense, it's meant to be a crazy endgame challenge in the Colosseum, plus I don't think Goofy would be able to do anything of use here other than provide moral support. Donald could be your healing bitch, but that's what elixirs are for. The guard ability is key to parrying the icicles, but the real MVP here is Leaf Bracer. It allows you to heal through enemy moves and seems to prevent damage from them to some degree. I would have had to get much gooder had I not been able to tank heal through many of his attacks. With all that in mind, none of these are really complaints. Ultimately, this fight expects a lot of you, maybe a little bit too much, which is part of why it's below its peers. That and I love melee fighting so much I wish you had more opportunities to unload on him at the cost of less deflect damage. But it's still a damn good fight. We're at the point in the top 10 where we're getting into the territory where all these bosses are great and we're only going up from here. As for the Ice Titan, I got a word of warning for you. Be careful, Sora is a savage. Number 9, Maleficent. From playing this game as a kid, I remembered Maleficent being a lot more terrifying. This first fight is pathetically simple. She summons two Heartless who can't reach you because you're fighting on her platform. She only has two attacks, one of which involves summoning meteors. These can be dodged by standing to the side where they are guaranteed not to reach you, which you have plenty of time to get to since this attack has a 5-second windup. Yes, seriously. And she'll swing her staff at you for pathetic damage. She's got that bitch vigor though, but since you're in no real danger, this fight is a cinch. Then Edgy Boy unlocks the darkness within and unleashes Black Dragon Kali Yeet upon us. Well, not quite. I would actually say that this boss is harder. Not only does each attack do devastating damage to you, she has the biggest health bar you've seen thus far in the game to contend with. Her attacks come pretty quickly and throughout the fight are mixed in with fire attacks that either home in on you, swing quickly, and each take up a portion of an already small arena and point for you to attack her. Fortunately, at this point in the game, you should have a fair enough amount of mana to keep arrow cast at all times. By doing that, using Cura and a single Mega Elixir, I was able to take down this beast on my first try. It's extremely hectic and busy, which match my playstyle perfectly. I love tanking damage through the use of magic and unloading everything I can in a race to reload MP for more tanking. This boss allows for that while matching it with an equal and creative challenge, at least in the second phase. Maleficent would likely be much higher on the list if not for that laughably mundane first phase. Altogether though, it stands as a great overall fight to cap off one of the best levels in the game. Number 8, Riku. Man, I hate this kid. As you reach Hollow Bastion, he takes the Keyblade from Sora in a struggle so pathetic you'd miss it if you blinked, and then Sora just gives up. He doesn't even try to get it back at all. After all the fighting to this point, just nothing. It takes Beast, a man of true conviction, to remind him not to be a little bitch and get up off the ground.
I'm not gonna give up now.
What do you call bowing down to Riku after he took the Keyblade for 2 seconds with no resistance whatsoever? You did try to get it back through the power of whining. The Keyblade chose you so you felt like you'd earned it on your own. It's good development for Sora because to this point he's just a face that carries the Keyblade. He needs some kind of conviction of his own. Kairi is this plot device that keeps both Sora and Riku's characters moving forward with very little character growth of their own. And with that in mind, you only get to see Kairi for like 2 seconds in the opening of the game. Y'all built a raft together and I get the power of friendship and all that, but it's all in the background. You as the player don't see it. It cheapens the value a bit, but you're left to assume they have a long history together, so you just let your imagination fill in the holes. Their whole struggle to this point is about reaching those that they care for. When you get invested in a story, often it's because it parallels something that you can personally connect with. I know I remember a time from my childhood when my friend gave himself up to dark powers to save the heart of a 12-year-old girl who's clearly pining after Sora.
Sora, let's take the raft and go. Just the 2 of us.
Bro, she don't even like you. Mr. Steal Yo Heart and Keyblade over here ain't having it though. But through the power of your friendship and your heart being the stronger one for it, you get your Keyblade back and it's time to teach this little shit a lesson. I honestly couldn't even tell you what his moves are because I cast Arrow and then ravaged him in the corner with Donald and Goofy. It was extremely satisfying. Then he's off pouting and then, no, Riku, no! You're a kid. Kid rule number 1, never, ever talk to strangers. What an idiot. And now he's possessed by who?
It is I, Anselm, the Seeker of Darkness.
And where is Kairi?
Kairi's inside me?
Alright, let's calm down. These are babies.
There's no way you're taking Kairi's heart!
Alright, let's... Really not much of a duel. He struggled to hit me with most of his attacks. Yet again, Era, Cura, and beat the shit out of this brat. That's not to say he doesn't have great fight design though. Unlike Cloud, a similar humanoid type fight, Riku gives you plenty of opportunities to unload, but he unloads back on you in equal measure. His attacks may be easy to tank or dodge, but that makes the fight more intense and exciting. The only truly scary attack he has in the second part of the battle is when he unlocks his power and flies around, yet again similar to Cloud. Even if his mechanics weren't as solid as they are, it's still so satisfying beating the snot out of this punk. In the end, Riku defends you against Anselm to try and redeem himself a bit, but Sora and Kairi care about reuniting with their friend though, and for Sora, he needs to believe wholeheartedly in the good of those around him. And I guess that's good enough because according to this mysterious voice, Riku has beaten the battle against the darkness. He and Sora are somehow connected, so maybe he can find some redemption in helping clean up the mess he helped along. As a whole, these fights are more enjoyable for their weight in the story and unleashing pent-up frustration than they actually are mechanical marvels. But they are still solid enough in fight design and with the narrative importance in mind to earn a spot near the bottom of the top 10. Number 7, Anselm. So after giving his report a read, the parallels between he and Riku are uncanny. He wanted off his world and found experimenting on the Heartless to bring about ways to travel between worlds appealing. Now he's got some delusion that darkness is the answer to everything because evil? I don't know, but I'm right ready for some ass kicking. Anselm was the third to last boss I took on in the game though, and as a result his first phase, while cool in concept, is laughable. He just floats around soaking up damage. Every now and again he blocks his front with the Heartless that does his fighting for him. Later down the health bar, it does some easy to dodge swipes, but this fight will be over before he can do anything significant. This phase won't even make you break a sweat. It's no exaggeration to say that some of the basic enemies in the game are more threatening, but at least he had a few unique mechanics. The second time around is a colossal improvement. I think Anselm's mechanics were designed to work more around a one-on-one encounter, which retroactively makes the previous fight look better because it's a warm-up with the crutch of Donald and Goofy. Anselm balances between giving you opportunities to go wild with attacks, but then throwing a quick one of his own at at you. Getting hit is costly because his main attack is to possess you, causing you to get frozen randomly while you're chased away with AoE magic. He can also summon shockwaves and dart around like an energy wave himself, but those aren't too frequent or hard to dodge. It's definitely more challenging, and the aggro focused solely towards you adds an undeniable excitement. It is one of my favorite singular encounters in the game. Then we suddenly Gurren Lagann in this bitch. Ansem's got this battleship that's gonna pierce the heavens, or maybe it's more appropriate to say he's gonna break through the heavens. Look at Captain Cranium over there. The thing's like a goddamn battering ram. This battle is weird. It's yet another flying battle, so your dodges rely more on your ability to float upward and downward. I do enjoy that this fight has you earn back Goofy and Donald over the course of it, even if fighting basic enemies to do so isn't all that exciting. I also like the pacing of fighting Ansem head-on mano-y-mano, beating down the ship, then fighting him again with your full party, in big part because we destroyed his ass. Then he gets ass blasted again by the light of Kingdom Hearts and evaporates. Mickey gets to look like a badass, Riku finally does something worthwhile, and it all ends with Sora and Kairi breaking the hearts of us all by being separated across worlds. It's more than a serviceable end boss. In fact, it's the best non-optional boss in the game from my point of view. It's just that, as you'll see, there are plenty of incredible optional bosses left for our final 6. Number 6, Leon and Yuffie. I wouldn't call the first time you fight Leon much of a fight, and by that I mean he destroyed me with such ease it was too embarrassing to call a proper duel. The second time around is much better. You've gotten stronger, but he's got Yuffie on his side to keep it balanced. Fortunately, you've got Goofy and Donald. It's wonderful how well multiple enemy boss fights work in this game because your party can take aggro while you focus on other targets. Yuffie has far less health and is a greater pest with her attacks focusing on range, otherwise preferring to juke and continue to throw attacks from afar. So I took her out first, and then Leon's actually pretty easy. That is until he summons a massive energy blade. That thing would slice through half of my health bar at level 25. It was great though, because it made me much more passive and considerate of when I could go in for hits. And bless Goofy, man. Donald was down for the count and Leon only had his sights on me, so the whole time Goofy was just bum rushing him. The strategy I had was to wait until he does a jumping slam, then it's safe to go in for damage. It may not be flashy, but I got the job done. I should also mention this fight takes place in the Coliseum, and you have to spend 8 battles worth of resources to get there. This meant my mana was really low upon starting the fight, but I kinda like that. What I wouldn't have liked is doing all 8 rounds over again to reach them, so thank goodness I beat them the first time. I know there are other battles individually with Yuffie and also with Cloud teaming up with Leon, but more so I just wanted a chance to cover everybody at some point on this list. I think Leon and Yuffie work best as a tandem, with one focusing on range and the other close combat. It provides a nice balance and is well deserving of a spot just outside the top 5. Number 5, Unknown. Taking this fight back to a time where no other game in the franchise existed, this is a fantastic setup. Released less than a year after the main game, Kingdom Hearts Final Mix added in this boss that serves as a teaser for what's to come. Watching the things this unknown character has to say makes so much more sense after having played the sequel, but I bet people were scratching their heads like crazy at the time. I love the idea of an in-game teaser for what's next, and I really wish there were more of those these days. The last big in-game teaser I can remember was PT, and we all know how that turned out. Back to the fight himself though. The easiest thing I can compare it to is fighting a Sith Lord that jumps around like Yoda in the prequels while wielding dual lightsabers and having all the terrifying force magic of the Emperor. That should paint a pretty nice picture. His ability to use magic is perfectly balanced with his ability to Krav Maga shank your ass all over Hollow Bastion. I faced him as my last boss in the game and I was definitely overleveled for it. It's a shame because I can tell the mechanics are all there. I think this fight may rival a certain somebody in terms of difficulty if Goofy and Donald were left out of the fight, as their assistance definitely turns the tide in your favor. Though my fight with him was short, he didn't seem to have much of a second phase. I did notice he had an invulnerability attack where he fired lasers at you, but it was fairly straightforward to dodge. Everything else is him meleeing, then laying out barriers and magic. It's extremely fast paced, which can be dizzying in a game with aged combat, but it works out well if you use the ever-reliant Eroga and Kurega. All in all, it's an incredible set piece of a fight, a phenomenal teaser that gets you thinking about what's to come, with just enough of an endgame challenge to keep your gameplay chops engaged. Number 4, Phantom. If I had to guess, I'm willing to bet that this will be my most controversial placement out of both videos. I know that some people absolutely despise Phantom, and you're not alone. My first handful of fights with him were filled with constant rage. Let's start by going through how he works. Phantom has a single weak point, his big-ass Uniball. It's got 4 flavors, fire, ice, shock, and physical. That means he can only be damaged by that source. Here's the catch though. After hitting that color once, it's liable to change. After hitting it 3 times, you break the ball altogether. That's the gist of how you do damage. damage. He's got 3 of his own attacks though. First, he'll swipe for a good chunk of health. Second, he'll fire a homing spell that will stick to you for an absurdly large portion of your HP. Finally, and probably the most reviled part of this fight, is his Doom mechanic. As you enter the battle, Phantom will cast Doom on Peter Pan, who is required to enter this fight with you. You have to cast Stopper on one of the clock faces to prevent the hands from moving. If they do a full cycle, Peter is KO'd for the rest of the fight. No reviving, he's done. Then it shifts to Goofy or Donald, and finally to you. Using Stopper to stop the clock is mandatory. There's no possible way to beat Phantom without doing it. So the fight is a race against the clock, but it's also an endurance battle because you can only damage him so much in a short time span thanks to his ball breaking. Until I took a step back and analyzed the fight, this left me fuming. Then I took a fight or two to watch him until I realized he has a very easy to follow pattern. First, he summons ball number 1. Do 3 correct attacks to break it and he'll come after you and swipe. Then he summons ball number 2. Do 3 more correct attacks to break it as well. After this, he'll run to the nearest clock face and summon his homing magic. Here's what you do. Go to one of the clock faces perpendicular to him, run up to the clock face and chill for a few seconds. This is the perfect moment for you to cast Stopra and use any others or Curega if you need MP or HP. And that's one cycle. Just repeat that for the entire fight and you're golden. I never had the clock move once after employing this strategy. His homing magic never hit me and his swipes are a cinch to dodge. What surprised me is how gratifying it was to execute this pattern. I've talked a lot over the course of these 2 videos about how many bosses with my playstyle boil down to tanking and spam attacking. Phantom completely throws all of that on its head, but in a clever way that works if you can strategize effectively. He took my mindless melee attacks and turned me into a strategic mage. For pulling that off and making it enjoyable, Phantom comfortably takes the number 4 spot. Number 3, Hades. This was one hell of a battle. Not only does he have the biggest health bar I'd seen thus far, he had some crazy high damaging moves, not to mention he happened to come after 39 previous fights that wore down all of my resources. Looking at you, Cloud and Leon. Hades' design is excellent. Rather than having a permanent second phase, he pops in and out of his rage mode by starting off with a flame spinning attack. His level of aggression in his rage mode is enough to make me not take a chance on any hits, and even his attacks in his blue mode are pretty terrifying. In his blue mode though, there are definitely appropriate windows to attack. Because he was so difficult, I had to resort to playing defensively, striking only when I was absolutely certain I could safely get attacks in to get a little shred of MP back. Then I would use that to heal either myself or Donald so he could spread the heals around too. I can safely say that it took me at least 5 minutes, if not closer to 10, of almost being out of both HP and MP, and the whole time I was sweating bullets. What I do like is even if you were a higher level, I don't think it would make sense to tank Hades' attacks with his damage output. A lot of his moves have damage over time, and those that don't have little gaps in between them in rage mode. It's great design, fun, and intense. My only question is, why is Hades the 10th seed in his own cup? Whatever the reason might be behind that, he's still a fantastic boss. Number 2, Sephiroth. God damn, this is a boss I could never beat as a child. In fact, I wouldn't just say that beating him was too difficult, I think I truly believed it was impossible. He has a health bar that stretches beyond the maximum limit, his attacks when I fought him around level 60 would kill me in 2 to 3 hits, and his tells are so fast your dodge timings must be flawless. Not to mention his blade feels like it can reach across half the arena. Honestly, I think this boss is too early for its time. The mechanics of Kingdom Hearts can barely keep up. Most bosses are a get good situation for me, and I'll happily throw myself at something for hours without much of a thought. But when I faced Sephiroth at level 60, I could tell from just a few fights this wasn't gonna happen. I couldn't even get his health bar down enough so I could start to see it tick downward. So you know what I did? Actually, I put Eye of the Tiger on and montaged all the way up to level 100, and then I went back. I fully expected it to be more manageable, but sadly I found that it wasn't just manageable, it was actually a hell of a lot easier, at least relative to this monster of a fight in my previous experience at level 60. That's because at this level, it was realistic to do what I did throughout the entire game. Cast the Roga, use Curega to keep my health up, and spam attacks. I considered not going all the way up to 100, but since I chose the shield and ditched the sword in the beginning of the game, I needed to reach level 90 and 100 to get the 2 MP rage abilities. Those allow you to gain back MP when you take damage, and from everything I read, they are considered a near must to overcome this fight. Now, like I said, it was easy relative to him. It's still a ridiculously challenging fight overall. His hits come in very quick in the first phase, but it isn't too much of an issue once you learn how to dodge most of it. The one attack I found troublesome was his AoE, mainly because he would summon it so quickly. I despise that attack at lower levels. It's one of those shitty F you get away from me type of AoEs that punishes the player for dodging and finding a good attack window. But I love an aggressive playstyle, so that one's on me. His second phase, he gains some speed and teleports a lot more, but what really matters is his Kiss of Death attack, or that's what I'm gonna call it. He pops out of a teleport and chants an incantation. If you don't stun him in 2 seconds, he will insta-kill you. If you don't have the second chance ability, that is. If you do, you can survive with 1 HP and all MP stolen, but here's a neat trick that I learned. If you happen to get hit by this, just throw an elixir right before it lands and you're all good. You'll need to because he quickly teleports in to slice that last sliver of HP. As he continues to dwindle down, he'll start to unleash furious combos, meteor strikes, and then orbs of magic begin to come along with all of his attacks. Truly, I cannot imagine doing this much below the max level. If you would die in 2 or 3 hits here like I did at level 60, I just don't know if I'd have the skill to pull it off. Does that make it bad? No, not at all. I think that optional content should sometimes be the kind of insane challenge that only players who practice their tail off can overcome. And like I mentioned, they do offer an alternative. Since this is an RPG, you get to choose the difficulty. Go in at a lower level if you're a glutton for punishment. I imagine level 70 to 80 would give you a more balanced fight, and I think beyond that it tips the scales in your favor. Even when they are tipped though, it's rough. Beating him was on my gaming bucket list, and I'm proud to say that after all these years, I finally downed the son of a bitch. Well, in terms of the tournament anyway. Afterward, Cloud and Sephiroth get ready to fight the real fight. Maybe in 2037 when the Final Fantasy VII Remake finally happens, we'll get a taste of it. Until then, you'll have to settle for duking it out here in the Olympus Coliseum. If you do, you had better prepare yourself for an excellent but brutal bout. And the #1 best boss in Kingdom Hearts 1, Kurt Ziza. This fight has incredible balance. Kurt is a yin and yang between 2 phases. To start, he prevents you from using any magic. To regain your ability to use magic, you'll have to destroy the 2 orbs he holds while he unleashes a number of devastating melee moves. This really punishes your need to heal through spells, so items are key. However, another bit of great design is that each of the 2 orbs he holds explodes with healing orbs when destroyed. Once you break them both, you get a chance to dig in with real damage for a short time. Then he goes into a meditative state with a shield that can only be brought down by magic. Again, items are really key here to keep your MP up. On my first attempt, I nearly won, but lost because I saddled Donald and Goofy with high potions. Nah, you gotta give them mega elixirs, you gotta give them mega ethers, mega potions. This fight's difficulty is not to be underestimated. Each time you knock Kurt down, it feels like your window of time to get real damage in is getting shorter and shorter. And when he switches back after 1 full cycle, he gets new, more painful moves, particularly the flying sword spin. Dodging this move to a degree is a must, because you are prevented from tank healing with Kurega due to the magic restriction, and he can knock you out of item use. It bears repeating, giving Donald and Goofy items here makes a huge difference. I love how balanced everything is. You have to use melee to earn back your right to use magic, but as soon as you do, magic is all that you can use. In return, Kurt matches your style and has a wide range of punishing attacks for both physical and magical. The fight is certainly a huge challenge, but never once feels unfair. Getting good while being able to dodge all of his moves while becoming a master of both melee and magic is the ultimate reward. Congrats to whoever got their name chosen in a contest to be named after this boss. You made us all sweat hard, Kurt, but it's worth it. As for all of you, be sure to let me know who your favorite Kingdom Hearts bosses are in the comments below. Be sure to vote for the hardest bosses in our survey down in the description, and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest content from the channel. As for today, thank you all for watching, much love to you, and I'll see you in the next video.